Hey, so today we're going to talk about the psychology behind your ambition and some issues that you might need to face along the way, and maybe some things that we can start to sort out. So you should be able to leave this video with a better understanding of your trajectory and how to navigate it so that you can feel some sort of happiness or fulfillment, and so that it's not a never-ending void of unfulfillment. So at its most basic, you have your current situation and you have your ideal situation, or current and desired situation. And the gap between those two is just growth to get to your ideal situation. And so inside of your head, you probably have one or both, probably both, material and personal elements. So the personal is split into mental and physical. So it's about you. So you probably physical would be like your dream body or your looks or your haircut or your style, you as a person. The mental would be like your character, who you are, like in here, not just on the outside. In here, pointing at my heart, but not just on the outside. And then the material is going to be like what you have, where you are, anything like that. So the physical world. So those are the things that will likely be in your ideal situation. So you might be thinking of living in a big house with nice cars, or maybe you're not one of those people and you just want financial freedom, or you're imagining you're going to be super jacked or have a six pack or you'll have good style or anything of those sorts. Most of them fall into these categories. Some of them probably won't. But that is what your ideal situation in your head looks like. And so the question that we're going to be talking about in this video is this even real, this ideal situation? And I'll explain why in a minute. But you could imagine your current self as this wonderful drawing here. I am not going to school for art, nor am I good at it. Don't hate. So that's like the premise out of the way. Now we want to talk about this void right here. So between your current and your ideal situation, you are going to experience a void, either on the way or once you get to your ideal experience. The reason is because of the idea of equilibrium. So you could imagine that your ideal situation is plus 10 HP, or act like it's a video game. So no matter at what point, no matter how much health you have, no matter like whatever, you always want plus 10. It's like a permanent boost. So no matter what your number is, you will always want this amount more. And that's kind of how this your situation works with ambition. And if this doesn't make any sense, please like wait. It will make sense. I will tie it all together. But it's because this idea of equilibrium. If you've ever taken like economics, this idea of supply and demand, it always goes into equilibrium, and this kind of works the same way. So on this growth, this is like a timeline. So as you grow, say you get to like right here on your growth path, you will reach an equilibrium. So say you've gotten a nice car and you have a little bit of money coming in, right? A little bit more money than you did last year. So you've gotten closer to your ideal situation here and you're on the growth path, but then you reach equilibrium. After 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, you get used to your new possessions. You get used to the person that you are. You get used to this stuff. And this is what's going to grow along the way. Think of it as like a loading bar. Like when you're 30% of the way there, you're going to get used to being 30% of the way there, and that's going to become your new baseline. And so this is why people who live super luxurious lifestyles get used to living luxurious lifestyles. We just get used to what we live. And so you can buy a super nice car and eventually you will reach equilibrium. You will get used to it. And then to you, that's going to be your current situation and you're still going to be wanting plus 10 HP. So every single time you take a step forward on the board, think of it as like a board game and you go forward each time. Each time you take a step forward, your goal moves one step backwards. Because you'll get used to it and you'll forget that you ever had a starting point that was earlier than this. This becomes your new starting point, your new equilibrium. And so this is what you base all of your goals off of. And so the problem with this is that you can never reach this because every single time you move a step forward, then you reach equilibrium after a couple of weeks there, and then your goal moves forward because you forget that you've moved forward because you get used to the things that you have. If you buy a $500,000 car and live in a mansion, after a couple of weeks, months, or years, that's just normal life for you. Like you get used to it. It sounds crazy, but you do get used to it. Think of it with anything you've ever bought. It's super exciting. It's like Christmas Day. It's super exciting for the first week, and then either use it or you don't, and you get used to it either way. Like I remember as a kid, like I would get like a computer for Christmas, and yeah, I use a computer a lot, but the excitement wore off. I got used to it, and then I kind of just forgot about it. And so this is kind of the idea of like practicing gratitude, is realizing the things that you have, but that's kind of not what we're talking about here. So this is the idea of equilibrium, and this is very important for the remainder of this. So now we want to talk about the void. And so equilibrium is what causes this void. And this is a never-ending void, and you will not fix this. Like, no, you can't just solve this problem. So every time you move a step forward, your goal moves a step back. And this is the void you will never reach. You will never, ever be happy with what you have because you will always want more. And so the gap between your current and your ideal situation stays the same. The only thing that changes is the position of your current and ideal situations. So like, for example, maybe your current situation is you're worth $10,000 and you want to be worth $1 million. Well, as soon as you're worth $1 million, you're going to want to be worth $1 billion. And so the gap is still the same. It's just shifted over here on the timeline, right? And that's how it just works. And now I don't want to say in absolutes this is how it works, because some people can like hit their number and then be out. And that's what we're going to talk about is this even real here? And that's kind of like the closer here, is just got to explain that once you reach an equilibrium, you get used to what you have, and then you then want more because you're used to it. And so the gap stays the same, your expectations just change. And so now to move forward, I blanked. Oh no, it's okay. So is the ideal situation even real? And the reason why we talk about this is because your ideal situation might not necessarily be a lifestyle or a number or amount of money. It may be something deeper than that, psychological. And so for me, I'm somebody who wants to prove myself. And whether this is a good or a bad trait is meaningless for this conversation for now. But the idea is that that is my deep psychological driver. And so is my psychological drive really to get all these material and personal things? Or is it just to fulfill a psychological driver that I have? Well, I would argue that it's probably my inner psychology wanting to prove myself. It's not necessarily because I want the cool cars or the freedom or the wealth. It's probably just because I want a form of freedom, yes, but also because I'm proving some psychology in me that is driven towards wanting more, needing more for acceptance or to be taken seriously. And so a lot of people have healthy or unhealthy psychological drivers, and that's why we question whether your ideal situation is even real, or if it's just a figment of your imagination that you've created as a goalpost for I'm enough, or some sort of goal for your psychology to feel like it's enough. And for me, this is where I find an important split, is if you always reach equilibrium and you will never be happy with your ideal situation, you will never reach it, you can either give up eventually at some point. I don't mean like stop pursuing it. What I mean is if your current situation is $10,000 net worth and your ideal situation $1 million, and 30 years down the line you're worth 30 million and now your new goalpost is $1 billion, then at that point you can either keep going and chasing and like feeling this void, and a lot of people do that, or you can decide, all right, enough is enough. I want more, but I'm going to accept what I have and stick with 30 million. And so those are the two different paths. And I would argue at some point in time, it's probably beneficial to take the $30 million path and not keep going, because I think that it would be pretty bad on your deathbed to still be chasing this void, because you will have not experienced the wealth that you've had or the experiences you had in life if you don't stop at some point to actually appreciate it. If you're always gunning it for the next thing, you're never actually going to appreciate what you have, which I think is extremely important. But this brings me around to two things. The first one is my psychological driver is to prove myself or to be taken seriously. And so this is what drives me to this ideal situation constantly. And it's never ending and it's infinite, and I am aware of that. But I have secondary drivers. My secondary driver is I don't like being told what to do or controlled. I like to be in control of my own time. So I want to start a business because I am in control of my own time and nobody can tell me where to be. And this is less of a proving myself psychological mechanism. The ambition is a psychological mechanism, right, that I've created to prove myself. But the want for free time is a character trait. That's something that I've actually reasoned out, and it actually makes sense. It's not some deep psychological driver. And so a lot of you guys have a deep psychological driver like mine, whether it be a storm of insecurity or to prove yourself or for your parents, anything like that. But you also have a rational reason to do things. And the person who stops at 30 million instead of going to $1 billion is the person I would say, who wins in this situation, because the rational thing for me is I just want to be financially free. I want to have time freedom. I want to be able to do what I need to do, and that will fulfill my logical, like rational needs. Like that's all I really want. But my insecurity will keep driving me for more even once I achieve that. And so getting to a place where you have achieved your rational goals, but are able to say no to this ideal situation, these psychological goals, is where you want to be. And so for me, like if my ideal situation and my ambition is telling me I want to be a billionaire one day, and then I sit down and rationally think about what I actually want as a person, and it's just financial freedom, then you can do anything you want with $10 million because you can make $800,000 a year just in interest, like somewhat safely. And with $800,000 a year, you can do essentially anything you want. And assuming at that point you don't have any bills. And so rationally, I only actually need 10 million to fulfill what I want as a person. And that's going like far beyond any societal norms. But if you compare the two, my psychological driver saying prove myself is always more, 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 more. And it's saying this much bigger number. But if you on paper think about what you actually want and not what's driving you, there's two different things. There's like the driver and then there's the vehicle. My vehicle is my psychological driver. Like, no, well, not drive. My psychological insecurity or programming to prove myself or want more that drives my ambition. That's the vehicle. So I'm using that drive in order to go and achieve what I want. So there's you have to distinguish between the two. Is we all, if you're watching this video, most likely have psychological drivers or insecurities that are driving us to be super, super, super high achieving in whatever realm you want. But rationally, we also have personal wants. And so one is the driver and one is the vehicle. You are the driver, your rational wants, you are the driver. You can choose. But the vehicle is this illogical need to prove yourself or to do more and this ambition. And so it's being able to use the vehicle until you know you've reached your destination, you should probably get out. Because the vehicle will keep going forever, right? Your psychology will keep wanting you to go forward and forward and forward and forward forever. It will never run out of energy. But rationally, you, the driver, need to decide when it's time to get out. And I believe it's time to get out when you have sat down and set a goal and stick to that goal. And that goal might be extremely unreasonable, but I guarantee you it's not as unreasonable as your psychological goal, the ideal situation that's constantly moving. And so this is the perfect case of you have two things driving you at all times. And depending on where you are in your financial situation, you only have one driving you. And I'll explain. That's horribly worded. I'm sorry. But I have two things driving me. I am not yet financially free, and I still want to prove myself. I have both of these going for me right now. So I'm naturally going to work a bit harder because I want two things. One of them is my psychological need or want, and the other one is my rational need or want. I want to be financially free, but I also want to prove myself. Those two drivers, or the vehicle and the driver, will keep me going. But a lot of people have already reached their rational limit. They've already reached that $10 million mark, for example. And a lot of them continue on without realizing that the only thing that's left driving them is their psychology, and that's where you get trapped. And so you need to sit down and decide what you actually want, what the limit of what your life really needs, and then take that as your off number, because at any point after that, the only two reasons you would continue to either make money or be successful or strive for anything anyway is either for a higher purpose or for insecurity. And there's no other reasons. Right? Once you make $10 million, you can do pretty much anything you want unless you want to like buy private jets. And that's like, you really believe that you really need that. Like rationally, you think that that's a necessary part of your life and keep going. But most people over $10 million is completely, there's no lifestyle change. And so you need to decide at what point is, what is your number? And then after that number, you're either being driven because all of that extra money you're making is going to a cause that is bigger than you. And you're not working for you anymore, which is the same thing as just not working. And like psychologically, I know you actually work in one situation, the other one you're not working. But what I mean is you're not working for your goal, you're working for some other goal, which is different. If you keep going after that and it's psychological, then you're just trying to prove yourself. That means that you've never sorted out your insecurities or your psychological needs, and you're not really being driven by a want anymore. You're just being driven by your insatiable void. I hope this makes a little bit of sense. So to sum it all up, is you have your current and your ideal situation, and in order to get to your ideal situation, you need to have some sort of growth, right? And these growths are either material or personal. Material would be cars or land or houses. It's things outside of you. And then personal is split into mental and physical. So physical being your body, the way you present yourself, like the way you dress, your haircut, anything like that. And your mental is like who you are as a person, your character, your values, and all of that. And this is how we typically define our ideal self and the path to becoming our ideal self. We grow in these realms to become our ideal self. But the problem is equilibrium. Is every single time we grow a little bit, we get used to it after a couple of weeks, and that becomes our new baseline. And so, like a health booster in a video game, if you constantly want plus 10, then every time you get into equilibrium, you constantly will want more. So the example that we used was if you currently are worth $10,000 and you want to be worth $1 million, then that's the gap. That's where you need to grow. But as soon as you're worth $1 million, you will get used to it and your brain will make a new goal for yourself and the gap will remain. And so no matter what happens, you always have this growth gap right here between your current and your ideal situation because we get used to what we have. But if you're constantly pursuing this growth without realizing that you're never going to be satisfied with it, you're giving into the void. And so this is where we have to question if your ideal situation is even real, because you will never reach it. And so there's two different ways that you should frame something. You can either frame it psychologically or rationally. So psychologically, it's an insecurity that is driving you to achieve a goal, whatever this ideal situation is. Rationally is an actual reason that you can explain and would make sense to anyone else. Something that you're aware of, something that can be written on paper. A lot of people aren't aware of their psychological problems. And so at the beginning of your journey, you're driven by both your rational and psychological needs. Rationally, you want to make $10 million because then you have complete financial freedom and you never have to work again, and you hate when people have control of your time. And so that's your rational goal that you understand. But your psychology maybe won't be satisfied until you make $1 billion, not because $1 billion is any more useful than $10 million, but because it's an insatiable hunger. It's this void that's constantly consuming, and it's because of an insecurity. And once you fix that insecurity, this will probably go away, but most of us aren't even aware of it to fix it. And so when we're starting our journeys, like I am, you're driven by both of these. So I am not worth 10 million or $1 billion. And so if I'm using those numbers for myself, then I'm driven by both a psychological need and a rational need. And so I'm going to be working harder. But say the day comes where I'm worth $10 million, rationally, I don't need any more money. And so from that day forward, the only reason I'm working is for psychological needs that will never be fulfilled. It's for insecurities, for feeling like I'm not enough, for some sort of proving myself. And so past that point, you're not really working for anything anymore. You're just giving into the void, which is a problem that should be avoided because you'll never feel fulfilled. And so at the end of this, the value that I'm trying to teach you is use everything you possibly can. Use both of these drivers, whether it be insecurity, it really doesn't matter. Insecurity, anger, whatever it is. Use both of the drivers to get to your rational destination. The thing that you know that you want, not the thing that you don't know that you want. Once you get there, you need to be able to be disciplined enough to evaluate, okay, this is enough money, this is enough success, this is enough achievement, whatever you're doing, doesn't have to be money, but this is rationally all that I set out to do, and I'm going to want more, but I'm only going to want more because of my psychological need, because I've already fulfilled my rational need that I've long defined and I've now achieved. So now, henceforth, I will only be driven by the psychological need, and that psychological need can never be fulfilled. And so if I continue to move forward with this and try and build an empire or continue to get better at whatever this realm may be, I'm never going to be satisfied. So do I want to live a life that maybe will have bigger numbers and might mean more, but is lacking satisfaction? Or would I rather live a life that I have achieved my rational needs, everything that I have ever wanted, like physically have wanted, but I will also be able to be at peace after I sort out my psychological issues? Because most people will never stop because their psychological issues never go away. Like if you never deal with your insecurities, then you're always going to have this drive. But once you get to that fork in the road where you can either stop and you've reached your rational destination, or you can continue going on the psychological path and only be driven by that, a lot of those people drive themselves mad or crazy because they never feel fulfilled, because they never fix their psychological issues or their insecurities or whatever is driving them. And so being conscious of the fact that you do have psychological drivers and you do have rational drivers. Like, I want to make a certain amount of money because that would allow me to have financial freedom, and then I can do what I want with my time, be with who I want, do what I want, when I want, where I want. But if my psychology is telling me I need 10x that, why? There's no reason for that. And so something else has to be going on up here. If I still want more after I've achieved that, and rationally have achieved everything I ever wanted, that want is not real want. It's the void sucking you in. It's some sort of insecurity. And you need to know when you are at that point and then know to shut it off, to deal with it, to find a way around it. Because you cannot keep chasing and never reach a destination because you will drive yourself crazy. So I hope this has made a little bit of sense. But the key and the main thing I want you to walk away with here is the two differences between your rational and your psychological drivers. Rational driver is everything that you want that is within reason and that you know that you want. Your psychological drivers may be things that you don't even know exist, that are just there in your psychology that you don't even know about, driving you forward. And you need to know that once you've achieved your rational desires and your dreams and your goals, that you are going to want more. And the reason behind that is because you are still driven psychologically because of some form of insecurity. And your job then is to either submit to that insecurity if you would like and to continue to grind out for the rest of your life without satisfaction, or to face that insecurity head on and fix it so that you aren't sucked into this void for the remainder of your life.